The Assange is a pretty big fucking project, isn't it? Like, it's a pretty big topic. But I don't want to do a show with it because Sam's like, I don't want to get into the whole Assange stuff. And it's like, I understand it. I understand, but I think it's like mega important. Like right now, like this is a fundamental topic, and I absolutely hate Donald Trump over this. Hopefully, I demonstrate why. Look, let's just do it. I'll just try, and I'll try not to ramble. Because I think it's an important topic, and it affects all of us. And it sort of vaguely links on to my favorite topic of talking about journalism. So, as I said, I'm getting ready. I'm getting all fucking geared up, right, for the Dota event. And it happens, man. Like, this thing that's been touted for a while. And listen, there's a journalist that I know. Her name is Cassandra Fairbanks. We've talked on a few occasions. She was the one who was accused of being alt-right by some tech publication.
Happy Easter, my man.
No worries. Happy
Love
Easter
from
too,
Germany.
Prince Edward. Yeah, much love too. Germany. Holy shit. Drunken German guys have been making you guys look like fucking assholes. I don't know if you saw that South Korean streamer. She goes out twice. She gets racially abused in public twice. Fucking Germany, dude. Like, get a grip. Anyway. But I love you, and I love Germany. Anyway, Cassandra Fairbanks. She's at Cassandra Rules. You can go check her out if you want to. But she actually decamped to outside the embassy. And there were a lot of people telling the mainstream press, telling people on social media, something is wrong. There are people on the street at all times. And she actually interviewed people like who looked like tramps, right? Looked like they had no reason to be on this street. And they were undercover police, it turned out. You even see them in the video of them taking Assange out. And she was on the money, and she's done a lot of pro work to try and, draw attention to the terrible conditions Assange has been living in. But before we get into why Assange was arrested and everything else, there's probably some of you, right, like who don't know the situation about Julian Assange. And there's no shame in that, right? Because it's not in gaming's wheelhouse. It's not even in, it should be in mainstream journalism's wheelhouse, but it isn't. So I'm going to try and give you a verbal summary. But basically what happened was Assange is an Australian dude who founded the website WikiLeaks. And WikiLeaks is a non-profit organization, and it publishes leaked materials from whistleblowers all over the world. So if, for example, during the elections, I know some of you support Trump, some of you don't, but during the last election, there were a number of leaks that came out about Hillary Clinton and the DNC. John Podesta's emails got leaked, and that's where the whole Pizzagate conspiracy theory came from. These were all published through WikiLeaks, okay? Now, his big leak was where he published a series of stuff relating to the American military, covert surveillance of civilians. Chelsea Manning was one of the big people that sort of contributed towards it. Then Bradley Manning. And they also did something that was dubbed Cablegate, which was like 250,000 U.S. diplomat cables, communication between diplomats around the world, that were also published, and it showed how... No worries. Hey, Gesundheit. Thank you. Means good health in German, I believe. Thanks a lot. Gesundheit. That's what you say when people sneeze, to wish them good health. Anyway... diplomatic cables so a cable is basically where you like communicate something and it's meant to be very private and hermetically sealed, and you talk about like, I'm doing this diplomatic work and I don't think that they're going to go for this, we might need to change this, and maybe we can lie to them about this. And there was a lot of sensitive information that came out of that, and it was between 1966 and 2010, so it encompassed a lot of diplomatic work from the US. And as we all know, US foreign policy is genuinely dishonest and pretty horrendous. So anyway, so how he ended up in an Ecuadorian embassy, because it's a tough one, because you might think, well, okay, so he's an Australian who's releasing sensitive information about the American government, not just the American government, multiple governments, almost anything. Even Scientology, by the way, they did a series of leaks that exposed even more shady shit about Scientology. Again, good on them for doing so. But what happened was, suddenly in 2010, while he was leaking this stuff about all these powerful governments, while he was in Sweden, two women accused him of sexual assault. And I'll just bring up a Guardian article from that time. Pay particular attention to how he looks in 2010. But he was accused of sex without a condom, which I think without you have an STD, you don't use a condom, you pretend you have a condom on. They call it ghosting or stealthing, I think in some different terms. Anyway, he was accused of doing this to a couple of Swedish women. He always maintained his innocence. He always said that this is being done as part of a political witch hunt, that these women were being induced to lie. I don't know. I can't say. I think if you commit a crime, you should probably go to the country and answer for those crimes rather than try and avoid extradition to do so. But equally, the average person isn't running a website that's leaking sensitive information about the US government, and you're likely to get snapped up by Interpol or the CIA, renditioned, and possibly never seen again, and possibly never given your human rights. So it's a very complicated situation. Now, these charges over time were dropped. It's a little bit disingenuous to say that in 2017 the authorities dropped the investigation and dropped the allegations, because they were dropped because a certain amount of time had elapsed, not necessarily that there wasn't the basis to still bring these charges. Indeed, after he was arrested, the Swedish law enforcement agency said, maybe we will still choose to pursue them. Now, as a result of this, in 2012, to avoid what he feared was a political witch hunt, and he would get arrested in Sweden and go and face these charges, and then he'd get extradited to the US. He looked for countries for embassy, one of these asylum rather. An asylum is where you say, my life is in danger. I don't think I'm going to get a free trial. You know, I've got all these legal stuff going against me. Will your country basically refuse to negotiate an extradition treaty with the country that's going to do me? And of course, asylum applies to other things. If you're a religious minority and you're being persecuted in a country, that's good. You can go to another country and say, listen, if I stay here, I'm going to die. Will you let me into your country where you don't persecute my group? This is why I've always said, and this applies to the Trump administration, it applies to every country around the world, you cannot call yourself a civilized country. You cannot call yourself a civilized society if you refuse to grant asylum to people. If they are genuinely fleeing a country because the alternative is death and persecution, and you refuse to let them in, you are scum. You are evil. The end. There's no debate or discussion about that for me. So when you hear like Donald Trump talk about, we must revoke asylum from these, no. That's not what you do. Economic migrants who hop the Mexican border and come here to work, yeah, I don't have a problem with those guys being necessarily deported and told to do it properly. No, I don't. I'm sorry if that's callous. But I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I'm here in the US, and I had to go through various, stages and get visas, and it's a very intrusive and complicated and stressful time, but I've done it probably out of respect to this great country, and a country I want to live in and eventually become a citizen of. I think if you don't respect those laws, they're perfectly entitled to deport you. If you come because you're being persecuted, and you can show that, if the country turns you away, they are evil. These are not contradictory ideals. Donald Trump has specifically talked about revoking asylum and making asylum harder to seek. And I think that's, while not evil, it's certainly not what you want to be doing if you want to overhaul immigration. It's not even the biggest part of immigration. It's not even why people come to the U.S. Asylum is the last thing you should be focusing on fixing. There's numerous other issues ahead of that. So fuck him for that. He asked various countries, will you grant me asylum so I don't get extradited to the U.S.? And there are very few countries who will resist the U.S. when it comes to extradition. And again, if you don't understand, extradition is literally a government says, hey, you're friends with us, we're friends with you, we know that dude's there. Your local law enforcement better go get him and extradite him to us, or it's going to affect our diplomatic and political relationship, because it's important. And you can be extradited for murders, you can be extradited for anything, whatever they want. If you've committed a serious enough crime and it's worth extradition, the government will come and apply for that extradition. And for example, the UK has multiple extradition treaties with European countries as part of the EU. But you might not, for example, say, like if there's an African country, let's say you flee the Republic of Congo or Liberia, a war-torn country, because your tribe, your group is threatened with death if you remain, because you're on the losing side of a war, of a civil war, then obviously Britain says, listen, Liberia, we have no political truck with you whatsoever. We actually send you guys aid, so fuck you. This guy gets to stay, and what the fuck are you going to do about it? Blow us up with the bombs you don't have? Suck my nuts. And so there are very few countries that will stand up to superpowers and say, no, we will not extradite somebody. Now, when it comes to the US wanting to extradite you, you can't hide in the UK. You can't hide in most European countries. You can't even hide necessarily in some Eastern European countries. You can't hide in any country that relies on the US for aid, because they'll just say to the government, if you're going to look after that dude and keep him in your country, all that food we send you, all that aid we send you, all that medicine we send you, it's all gone, literally tomorrow. I sign a bit of paper, send him home, and then you weigh it up. Is giving this guy, one guy, asylum worth it? So you're left with South American countries that have a lot of fractious relationships with the U.S., like Venezuela, Ecuador, Colombia, all countries like this, or Russia or China. These are the places you can go. Now, I'm pretty sure, if I remember rightly, WikiLeaks has leaked a bunch of shit about China. That's off the fucking table. China's not a safe haven if you're a fucking journalist or whistleblower. They just kill you. We still haven't seen the guy who stood up to the tank in Tiananmen Square. No one knows where the fuck he is. So, I mean, to get some political capital with the US and stop this trade war, oh, yeah, so Assange can't go there. Anyway, point is, Ecuador said yes, and it works out brilliantly because you're in the UK and we have an embassy in the UK. Now, here's the other thing: the UK turned around and said, "Oh wait, you're chilling in an Ecuadorian embassy in London. All right." Newsflash, as soon as you step out, we're going to arrest you because we've got extradition treaties with Sweden. And we believe you must go and face those charges. And he also resisted arrest for some UK charges. So now the UK manufactured a reason to arrest him in the UK. I think it was failing to report for a matter of international extradition, right? So the UK were like, we're gonna come and get you. You had to have an extradition hearing in the UK. So basically, he couldn't leave this embassy in London, right? And this isn't a big embassy, as you will see as we go through this. This is a tiny, tiny building in London. And he was trapped. He was effectively imprisoned. Every bit of food he ate had to be delivered. He had a one bedroom, one kitchen. He was basically living. Some of you guys will be able to identify with this. You know, your first ever apartment, your student apartment, right? When you're at college or university, he was living like that, right? And he had to. And he couldn't go out, and people couldn't come in unless they were specifically approved by the Ecuadorian government. Because also, in case you're not aware, how an embassy works and the reason you can seek asylum in an embassy, the reason you can go to an embassy, the reason if you ever lose your passport, if there's ever any problems, or if you're ever facing a criminal charge in a foreign country, you must flee. Assuming, an uncivilized country, I should say, like, what happened to Otto Warmbier in North Korea. You must find the embassy of your country and go in. Foreign powers cannot enter. It's like an act of war. It is hermetically sealed. They must apply for permission. They cannot come because it counts as the soil of your country. So you have no jurisdiction. So that's why you go to embassies. So while he was in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, he was technically in Ecuador. Nobody could go get him. But what this meant was, for all this time, 7 years, right? He was trapped in this fucking tiny little shithole building in London. Now, what had started to happen was he had basically eroded goodwill with the Ecuadorian group, with the Ecuadorian administration that had granted him asylum. And let's have a look. Because when it happened, when it went down, the Ecuadorian president himself released a video. Right.
Why did you revoke the asylum of Julian Assange? What did he do?
Varios de los mismos insultos que profirió el Ecuador. De manera verbal, el momento en que se refirió a nuestro país como un país completamente insignificante, por una parte, y por otra parte, y qué pena tener que decirlo por este medio, pero inclusive manchando con...
Do remember this whole smearing feces on the wall thing, by the way. Just as a general piece of advice, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you are seeking asylum from a country and you are in an embassy, do understand you are there under their hospitality and good graces, and smearing feces on the wall probably is a bad idea. But I'll also add, nobody is meant to be in what is effectively solitary confinement for 7 years, and you might go mad, and you might, as a result of that madness, smear shit on the walls. But hold on to that thought. We'll come back to it.
Ese es de él, las paredes de nuestro país. Creo que eso es suficiente motivo para revocar y para terminar ese asilo.
And how did he treat staff?
Bueno, muy mal, bastante mal. De manera despótica, inclusive agredido a algunos de los guardias, algo que definitivamente no se podía tolerar. Vuelvo a recalcar, colmó nuestra paciencia y exageró completamente nuestro sentido y nuestra tolerancia.
I've heard reports that he was spying on your staff. What does that mean?
Bueno, realmente sí. Permanentemente instalaba cámaras y tomaba sus propias decisiones sin consultar, bajo ninguna circunstancia, a los funcionarios del gobierno ecuatoriano en la embajada. Es necesario recalcar que, además, publicaba fotos de la intimidad de mi familia, de mi esposa, de mis hijas, y francamente lo único que encontraron es una familia unida, una familia que se ama y una familia que es feliz.
Okay, but one of the photos showed you in a hotel room, on a bed, there was some lobster. Was that the final straw? Some people have suggested it was because you were embarrassed at a time when you were introducing austerity into Ecuador, that is the reason that you kicked Julian Assange out of the embassy.
Bueno, le voy a comentar algo. Casualmente era el día de mi cumpleaños. Un día de mi cumpleaños que me quedé viendo el fútbol en la cama, pues era un día feriado. Homenaje pues a ese día especial para nosotros, nada más. Una foto de intimidad que lo único que revela es mucho amor.
His claim is that he is a champion of open government, of freedom of information, that he is a journalist and deserved asylum.
No, verdaderamente no es así. Es un terrorista informático.
I can't do it. I can't do it, right? Here's what you got to understand. They're all the fucking same, mate. They're all the fucking same. All these leaders, all these countries, mate. Oh, he's not a journalist. He's a cyber terrorist. Oh, how exactly did you arrive at that classification? Well, he leaked information about powerful people and put it in the public domain that might make people hold the powerful people accountable. That sounds like journalism to me. Yeah, but he did it where like hacks and that. Don't often journalists come across information due to either whistleblowers or compromised sources or and don't we all readily agree as long as they don't break the law themselves, it's all okay? He's a cyber terrorist though, isn't he? He's a cyber terrorist. He's fucking it up, man. He is taking away our power from the globalists. We're the globalists, right? All the world leaders around the world. And yeah, he just had to go in the end. I'm going to show you the real reason, by the way, as to why Ecuador did this. But let's just listen to the Ecuadorian president. By the way, I also just want to add, I fucking loved Paulie in The Sopranos. I love Paulie Walnuts. So to see Paulie doing this right now is breaking my heart, you know? Hey, Tony, he's a cyber terrorist. Tony, he's a cyber terrorist. But it's upsetting me.
Que no es que entrega la información que tiene, es decir, él selecciona de acuerdo a sus conveniencias y de acuerdo a sus compromisos ideológicos selecciona la información que provee. Además, violó, vuelve a intervenir en la política de los países y más aún de los países amigos. Intervino en el Vaticano, intervino en las elecciones de Estados Unidos, intervino en el tema de Cataluña, en España, algo que no podía hacer y que no es correspondiente con su condición de asilado.
And again, interference. What is the bar for interference? Anybody that tells the truth is interfering. Anybody that presents information is interfering. Anybody who lies is interfering. You know, it's a very interesting double standard, isn't it? That when, for example, Facebook say they will shut down fake news, and they actually don't shut down fake news, but they just ban conservatives ahead of an election. Or when they shake hands with Macron's government and say, don't worry, Macron, we're going to fucking totally help you get elected. Nobody says Twitter's interfering with an election, right? Facebook's interfering with an election. Google's interfering with an election. They don't say that, do they? No, it's not interference. That's their duty, right? When a whistleblower publishing... By the way, WikiLeaks have never once been proven to have published something that's false. Not once. Not once. They are, in fact, more reliable than CNN, MSNBC. They're more reliable than every US network combined. And instead, what they say is, they go, they're interfering. What are the news networks doing? What is constant lies about Russiagate? Completely exonerated by the Mueller report, by the way. Is that not interfering with 2020's election? It's around the corner, guys. Is that not interference? Nah, it's not interference. We're doing our job, but Assange is interfering. He's not interfering. He's presenting information that the public has a fucking right to know. You know this. And it's disgraceful of Ecuador to renege on this. But again, I'll show you why. I'll show you why. Spoiler. It's money. It's always money.
Right? Do you believe he was an agent for Russia?
Poco difícil decirlo. Pero, si
he's a Russian agent like everyone else, like me, like you, like Trump.
Seleccionadamente no topaba en ningún momento.
So he was on the Russian side?
No sé si por acción o por omisión, parece que sí.
Were you under pressure?
He hated
from
Clinton.
The British
Clinton said she wanted to fucking drone him.
To revoke his asylum?
No, bajo ninguna circunstancia. Conversamos sin duda alguna con el gobierno británico, al mismo tiempo que lo hacíamos pues con la Procuraduría Jurídica del señor Assange y con el señor Assange. Inclusive la consecuencia fue precisamente la firma de esos protocolos de convivencia de los cuales le hablaba hace un momento. Nosotros, precautelando la vida del señor Assange, precautelando sus derechos, el hecho de que no sea lesionada, a ningún país en el que pueda sufrir torturas o en el que pueda tal vez correr peligro su vida con la pena de muerte.
And Mr. President, a final question. Are you relieved that he's gone?
Yo creo que todos los ecuatorianos están aliviados.
Right. Also a lie, by the way. Thanks for the sub, by the way, buddy. Paponki, 8 months. Love you. All Ecuadorians aren't relieved, actually. They're not relieved. And if they are relieved, it's got nothing to do with Assange being... It's the necessary kind of potential results off the back of that. This is absurd. This is absurd. I think most people like Ecuador because... And thank you, too, Benjamin Odeso. Is that another... German? Like Oder means order, so interesting. Anyway, I think most Ecuadorians admired the fact that their country was independent and did stand up to the US, despite the fact that it's been on and off. Like, if you go back to 2013, America, I believe, stopped aid to Ecuador. They started it again. We'll get into all.
Se acaba de hacer una encuesta en la cual casi el 80% de los ecuatorianos deseaban de que salga ese.
Who did a survey? Oh, it was a government survey. Okay. You're the government. Oh, okay. All right.
Debe respetar el sitio que le ha dado acogida, que le ha dado afecto, inclusive, y que le ha alimentado durante todo este.
All right. Enough. So you get the picture. The Ecuadorian president was out there basically just straight saying to every motherfucker who would listen, yeah, we did it. We got rid of him. He's a cunt. He shit on the walls. He did this. He did that. We're super happy about it. Sure, it came out of left field. We didn't even give him full warning. We didn't even try and arrange extradition to another country that would have given him asylum. But this is where it gets interesting. Now, I'm not going to pick out bullshit journalistic sources, but let me just see if I can find one that you guys will believe. All right. You won't believe these guys. But hopefully you understand, if an establishment publication is writing about this, then you get it. So why did Ecuador suddenly, mysteriously, decide that now is the time that Assange's asylum must be revoked, he must be arrested, he must answer the charges in Sweden, but before he's even going to get a chance to answer to those charges, he's going to be extradited to the US, most likely. That's what a lot of people assume is going to happen, and he's going to have to answer for charges of leaking sensitive information. There's even a potential he could face the death penalty. It's crazy. Well, here's why. Oh, wait. Let me... I don't want to use this website. I want to use a different one. All right. We'll just look at this. Okay? This isn't a reliable source. Right? But there's a lot of people written about this, and the mainstream publications don't want to write about this. I thought I had a better link to this. There is. There's a better website we can.
That's right.
Like, no one's disputing the facts, but I don't want to link to some garbage fucking blog, and I just gotta find somebody who's done a write up for this. All right. We'll go to the source itself, right? Fuck the blogs. Okay. And this won't contextualize it within Assange. But March 11th, all right, the IMF, this is the International Monetary Fund, of which, if you're not familiar with, the International Monetary Fund, and again, I will get it exactly as it is described, because they don't want to fuck with what it is and misspeaks, but we can discredit everything. But the International Monetary Fund is basically an international organization where the headquarters for it are in Washington, and it consists of about 190 countries around the world, where they bring in they have fiscal cooperation, and they look to facilitate international trade. And if a country's not doing well, they can apply for loans to get them out of temporary problems. And it's basically an international financial cooperation. All right, so just before this happened, all right, Ecuador were given a $4.2 billion loan from the IMF. It's right here. And what they want to do is they want to use this money to create jobs, boost tech jobs, everything else. And you can see here, following the board decision, right, which it's based in Washington. All the U.S. power players are on the IMF, right? It says here, the Ecuadorian authorities are implementing a comprehensive reform program aimed at modernizing the economy and paving the way for strong, sustained, and equitable growth. The authorities' measures are geared towards strengthening the fiscal position and improving the competitiveness, and by so doing help lessen vulnerabilities, put dollarization on a stronger footing, and over time encourage growth and job creation. So this was basically signed off on. There are elements within the GOP that obviously are privy to this information, and this was in March 11th. And here we are in April, only a month later, and suddenly Assange is arrested, removed from Ecuador, and it looks to be cooperating exactly a month later as it happens, because he was dragged out of the embassy on April 12th. So there are a lot of people theorizing, and I will let you guys make your own assessment about this. I am presenting two separate points of information, and you can decide whether or not they are linked. But there is certainly a very interesting coincidence that Ecuador have been applying for fiscal aid from the IMF. They've been wanting to boost their country's economy. They need the US to sign off on this. They need the IMF to sign off on this. And then less than 30 days later or whatever it is, it turns out there's an operation in place to get rid of Ecuador. Now, to get rid of Assange. And Ecuador have done this thing where the president himself is coming out and going, hey, look, we coincidentally did a survey to ask the public whether they wanted to remove him, and 80% said so. It is very, very dubious. I don't subscribe to conspiracy theories. You should always look into this stuff yourself. But one of the things you will notice that hasn't been mass reported in the public, in the mainstream media to the public, is that turns out the US and the IMF just signed off on a $4.2 billion loan shortly before Assange gets removed. This is incredibly dubious. And it looks like the US found basically a back door to get Assange out of the embassy. My thoughts, my opinion, not necessarily fact. Now, here's another thing we want to do as well. Let's talk about conditions within the fucking embassy. It is bad. I mean, when I saw Assange, when I saw the video of Assange, let me just find it for you. Is this it? Yeah, here it is. Somebody uploaded a live recording of it. A journalist at the scene, a citizen journalist at the scene, managed to get the arrest of him. Right. Like, wait. You have to understand. Look at the fucking state of him. He's 47. This motherfucker looks 77. Look at him, man. Look at how withered and frail and aged he looks. It is insane. Let's not pretend he's had a good time while he's been in this embassy. That is a 47-year-old man. You probably have family members who are 47. Do they look like this? Do they look like a fucking D&D gnome who is 500 years old? No, they don't. This is outrageous. The mental toll it is taking on him, the physical toll it is taking on him. It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. So do not tell me that he's been having, like the Ecuadorian president has tried to imply, oh, he's eating lobster, he's having a good time. Once again, this is not a man who has been pampered. This is not a man who has lived in luxury. This is sad. He is frail. He is looking desperately ill, desperately malnourished, and desperately older than his 40. He looks 77. That isn't an exaggeration. His face, again, this is the face of a 77-year-old man. Not 47. Not a black hair on his head anymore. Right? And exactly, look at me. Right? I'm in my late 30s. He's 10 years old, right? This guy being dragged out of here is 10 years older than me. Nah. No. That is wrong. That is wrong. That is wrong. There is something desperately wrong there. So, anyway. So, Assange gets arrested. It's interesting because to me, Assange, what he's done with WikiLeaks, what he's created with WikiLeaks is unprecedented. It is the true first example of actual consequence-free, guaranteed anonymity, mass respect whistleblowing. It is a receptacle for no matter what is going on, whether you work in a corporation, whether you work for a government, you can basically, if you have access to documents that show they're doing something illegal, unethical, immoral, you can drop it here. What WikiLeaks is essential to our fundamental freedoms, essential to stopping powerful people exploiting the underclass. Regular civilians like you and me, right? And understand how the machinery of it all works, right? The mainstream press tell you WikiLeaks is endangering lives abroad for releasing information about how we endanger lives abroad. The mainstream press, the government, they tell you, hey, WikiLeaks is, you can't listen to it, you can't trust it. Never been wrong. Never been provably wrong. And then when it turns out they're provably right, they come out and they go, yeah, but, you know, should they be doing that? They didn't redact those names. Good. I want to know who the fuckers who are fucking with me are. Don't you? WikiLeaks is is an institution to be loved, cherished, respected, but more importantly than any of that, preserved and saved. Because it is the closest thing we've had, and as we've seen, listen, you know, is there a difference between CNN and Fox anymore? It ain't like it used to be. Fox with the obvious laughingstock, CNN tried. Not anymore. Not anymore. Partisan politics up the wazoo. They're all serving different branches of the fucking American government. They're just extensions of the party, man. Where are the independent journalistic outlets? They can't afford to do it. They go under. Anyone that actually breaks a story and it tries to get the prominence, the mainstream media, you know, say it was wrong. And I'm going to show an example of that with Assange. But the key thing here is WikiLeaks is so important to our democracy, so important to our freedom. And when I saw Assange get extradited, get arrested, I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. And what I'm more heartbroken about is I understand that Assange is a weirdo cunt. I think you'd have to be. What Assange has basically done is choose to risk to live his life as a pariah. He's chosen to live his life as somebody that will be marked for death for the rest of his life. No normal person does that, right? So let's have a look at some of these claims, like about this feces. Now, The Independent, right? The Independent poses as one of the most liberal papers in the United Kingdom. If you're a lefty, you must read The Independent. It sort of goes Independent, Guardian. If you try and be a centrist, it's The Times, but it's owned by Murdoch, so what does that even mean? The Mirror is over here. Who knows what the Sun is up to? It doesn't fucking care. It just fucking blows in the wind like a used condom full of shit. That's the Sun. And then when you get to the right, you know, it starts with the Times, and then you get the Mail over here. This is the spectrum. The Independent is as left as it gets. So why would the Independent run a fucking story about how Assange deserved to be kicked out of the Ecuadorian? To me, it wouldn't matter if he was sleeping on a fucking bed of his own turds. It ain't nice. But the whole cleanliness is not why you granted him asylum. You grant somebody asylum to save their lives. But here it is. The Independent. They couldn't help themselves. Julian Assange, right? Come on, expert. You got this. You got this, buddy. Loves a flash. Yep. Keep going. Keep going. Load that ad. Load that ad. Just don't look at it, guys. Just do this. I'll tell you when it's ready. Still flashing. Griff, cut this out. I called you Jeff earlier, so I was thinking of Jeff Kim. Here we go. Right. New video. We have to have an ad first. Because we have to monetize even Julian Assange being brutalized. You know? Oh, get a car! American corporations! Right, okay. Right. So this is the video. New video shows. I mean, this is just the arrest video. We even saw that. So where's this new video that shows his? Oh, is it this video? Do we have an ad on this too? Really? Really? No. What about this one? Oh, is this the video? Holy shit, Independent. I can't even tell where the video is. Can we skip the ad? No, that's a quiz. I don't want to do a quiz. Why would you monetize this? Don't wait. OP gel color dries and I can't wait, mate. I'm there. Give me that OP gel color. Can we have a look at Assange now? No, that's just an ad. I've just clicked 2 ads. I've just funded them for years. Where's the video? Right. Fuck the Independent. I think this. Right, I've got the video. Right now, when you watch this, guys. Right, when you watch this, please understand. You are watching somebody who is. I found a boomer. Listen, guys, I can't. Adblock doesn't work in XSplit. They're mutually exclusive. I can't put the ad blocks in. Into XSplit, or it just doesn't work like that. Because the way XSplit works is it gives you a completely stripped out view. Anyway, when you watch this video, remember this is a guy who's been in solitary confinement for 7 years. All right, remember that. So when you see crazy homeless Assange, remember. He is crazy, sure. He'd have to be already. I've read the stories about how he doesn't wash and he smells and he's got poor personal hygiene. They're well documented, and he was always eccentric. But again, you would have to be to do what he does. But people publishing this video and saying, "Oh, look, he was mental." He's been in solitary confinement for 7 years. It's interesting, isn't it, that we are to be empathetic to the mentally ill, but somebody who has a legitimate reason to be mentally ill is manifesting symptoms of being mentally ill. Can't be empathetic to him because of the political importance of what he does.
Boy, Gandalf looks good too.
Gandalf, mate, this is Fly, you fools. Have a look. Keep in mind, this is what they deem as being mental. He's having a punch in the air. You know? Let's get rid of that ad. He's drinking straight from the carton. Right, he leaves. Somebody, by the way, clearly filming this, knowing he's already going to get extradited, so they can use this as an excuse. We get back to that loan thing. Not a problem, guys. Nothing wrong with this. Nothing wrong with a guy just suddenly deciding to film him conveniently before he gets removed from and has his asylum revoked. Right. So right now he's displaying symptoms of distress, boredom, maybe even OCD that's developed while he's been there. I mean, again, I'm not an expert in these things, but walking in and out of a doorway continuously like that is a very OCD thing, especially as each time he walks in, it's predicated by, you know, permeated with another swig of the thing. So, right? This just looks like yoga. But again, imagine having zero contact with another person and what that would do to you. Like, this guy has literally met a handful of people in the 7 years. So here he is. Yeah, he's we've all seen Old Boy. We didn't go, the main character, Old Boy, like, this is a bit weird, isn't it? No, he's in complete isolation. Obviously, he's got mental, hasn't he?
You're not even a real journalism.
That's right.
Look at his tiny kitchen. Oh, no, he's jumping up and down on the spot. Mental. 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 A man with zero access to the outside world is like exercising in a bizarre fashion. He's had no one to talk to for 7 years. Mental. Right? That was published by the Mail, and then the Independent picked it up. They're not running any explanations. They're not running any explanation. You know what I mean? The guy is clearly suffering from mental distress. This should only evoke pity. If you're humane, the only emotion you should be feeling is, oh my God, like, that guy is really struggling with isolation. Probably doing better than any of us would do, honestly. But then, of course, the feces story was doing the rounds. And, right, here we go. Let me find you the reports on this. The BBC couldn't wait to run the story about how Assange smeared feces all over the world, all over the walls of the Ecuadorian embassy. And apparently this is a story that needs to be heard all over the world. And indeed, look, boom, feces, CBS News, feces. Oh, he smeared shit on the walls. He smeared
Hey guys,
shit
Brian and Chrissy here from 1077 GM.
You're pretty loud. Calm the fuck down. You just deafened all my viewers, you mad cunt. Feces. The Independent. Let's come back to them. Right? Here we go. Independent, the lefties. You want me to be on the side of Assange? He smeared feces. Feces bad. This is going to flash a million times because the Independent's a dying medium and needs to basically fucking put a lot of ads on it. What about CNN? What do you think, CNN? What was it? What did he put on the wall, CNN? Did he put feces on the walls? Not feces on the walls. Well, revoke his asylum. Look at that. Julian Assange arrested in London, and let me tell you, they've changed that because it actually says Julian Assange put feces on the walls. Fuck your tech. Fuck your feces. Feces on the walls. there's so many publications that picked up and ran this story. Obviously, the Daily Mail as well. And isn't it interesting that the right-wing press, right, and the left-wing press are identical in this? Weird, isn't it? It's almost as if
Not even a real journalism.
puppet masters were pulling them. And it's not coming up because it's the Daily Mail. But let me tell you, the Daily Mail absolutely ran a headline called Muckipedia. I wish I could show this to you. Muckipedia, they said, as if it was in any way funny. Let me just do it. I'm gonna print screen it. I'm gonna print screen it because you probably don't believe that they would be that callous. Right, here we go. I mean, obviously you're tagging Vince because you like scat, but Vince is more than aware. Vince was the last guy to visit Assange in the embassy. That's why. It's not even Assange's shit. It was Vince's the whole time. Right? Oh, it just opens up. Muckipedia! Muckipedia! Julian Assange smeared feces on the walls of Ecuador's London embassy. Why do we need a journalistic pun here? Does anyone know? But isn't it weird? Everyone is saying, oh, you know, Assange just didn't respect the one-bedroom prison he had. It was a prison, you know, human rights organizations spoke out and said that
You're not even a
the conditions
journalism.
Assange are living in are mind-blowing.
That's right.
And yet here we go, the media, Muckipedia, it's all a bit funny, and he did smear shit on the walls. Let's fucking kill the guy, eh? He smeared shit on the walls. He went mental! He's been in solitary confinement for 7 years! What an absolute fucking joke. I don't give a fuck if he smeared shit on the walls every night. That isn't why you grant asylum. So anyway, and this is the most problematic element of it for me. Better pour another drink for this. Good on your Buchanan Deluxe. You're not a quality beverage, but you are a good beverage. And I like the way that you come out at the same speed and same color as my urine. I like that. Makes me think about where it's all been going. Right. It'll happen to you, kids, when you get old. Trust me. If you think that stream like a racehorse is going to last forever, there's a lot of things that change. Anyway. Right. Surely the one group of people, okay, the one group of people that would be horrified at what is happening with Julian Assange and what is potentially going to happen to Julian Assange is journalists, right? Because haven't we heard non-stop from American journalists about how Donald Trump, by saying Jim Acosta is a fucking joke, which he is attacking journalism by saying, you know what, if you wrestle shit out of a female intern's hand, we'll revoke your press pass. Everyone, this is an attack on journalism. This is an attack on journalism. Donald Trump is a despotic dictator. Right? Surely the one group who would defend Assange is journalists. Surely. Am I right? Yes or no? Like, do you understand where I'm coming from? Like, why would you want the American government having anything to do, like, you know what I mean? But nah, they couldn't wait. This is how you know something's rotten, guys. Something's wrong. Let me just show you the blanket coverage. Everyone with a blog rushed to tell the world this wasn't an attack on journalism because Assange wasn't a journalist. Let's analyze the definition of journalist again. If you're a journalist, you release information that the public needs to know, that's in the public interest, that can harm powerful people, and you do it on a platform of understanding it's absolutely true and it's absolutely verified. Okay. Assange is more of a journalist than any of the White House correspondents at any of the major US networks. That is an indisputable fact. If you tell me that's wrong, you're mental. You haven't been paying attention for 2.5 years, 3 years, whatever the fuck it's been, whatever nightmare we've been living in, where journalists justify lying to you because Orange Man bad, it was her turn, let's fuck, Nazis everywhere. Name it. Name the deranged justification to lie to you. But they all rushed. Salon! Right? They're not a high-level journalistic public. Journalism's Assange problem. These days, anybody with an internet connection can be a publisher. That doesn't make everybody a journalist. Kathy Keeley argues Assange isn't a journalist and that it's a worrying standard that anybody can be one. Oh, hey, Megatron. I can't possibly think why a journalist would think that. Do you know what I mean? I can't possibly think why a journalist at a shitty site like Slate would try and argue that. All right, that's just Slate, Richard. That's just Slate. You're doing that thing again where you pick one or two, and you're being it's a straw man. You're a clown. All right. CNN, right? Imagine this. Imagine having the audacity of your CNN to say Julian Assange. This is mental. This is too much. Julian Assange is an activist.
At
hey,
LB,
ladies.
we've always believed.
Shut up.
The best application.
Shut up, ladies. Shut up, ladies. Shut up, men. Julian Assange is an activist, not a journalist. Imagine being CNN and writing that, unironically. Imagine it. Imagine it. How? How do you do this after 3 years of being the official voice of the Democratic Party? How do you do it? How, even employing relations of fucking senators and congressmen and ex-Obama administration employees, and they're all there, and hey, we're journalists now. Yeah, there's no bias here. We've only spent our entire lives working for the Democrats. We're journalists now, and we're completely impartial. How on earth would you ever write the headline and not go, wait a minute, people are going to point out rightly that we've been activists for Hillary Clinton, and like there's that joke about us being the Clinton News Network, not without some truth. Oh, and didn't we collude, actually, which was proven, funnily enough, by WikiLeaks! You fucking hacks! That we proved that, like, Donna Brazil, didn't she leak some fucking questions? Oh, so we have an actual, not only are we biased, not only have we been activists, we also have a vested interest in piling on WikiLeaks because they made us look bad. Let me just quickly write up this story about Julian Assange isn't a journalist. The audacity of this is so, it is beyond a joke. It is beyond a joke. I've been on the fence about certain publications. I've even said in the past, never judge a publication. Try and read the bylines. Judge the right. Fuck CNN. I am beyond now. This is so ridiculous. Yeah, they made you look bad. Yeah, they proved that you were actually biased and had ties. Julian Assange is not a journalist, is he not, CNN? Meanwhile, every fucking day, I have to read bullshit about how revoking Jim Acosta's press pass, which is a privilege, not a fucking right. He can do the coverage from home. Nobody is silencing him, but that's an attack on journalism. But Assange is not a journalist, so it's good. It's good he's going to go to prison. It's good he's going to mysteriously die. Fuck you, CNN. You don't give a fuck about anything. You have no fucking principles. What a fucking joke. And anybody who reads this shit fucking rag and believes for a goddamn second that they're actually journalists and honest and not just a fucking disgusting corporate entity. Fuck you too, you morons. It's all right, Richard. You are going a bit crazy there. You're right. I'm going a bit overboard. It's just CNN. CNN's going to trigger everybody. Okay. What else do we have? Who else said he wasn't a journalist? We can do National Review. People respect the National Review. Supposedly bipartisan. Wrote an article. Here you go. Oh no, you can't see the color white. Sorry. Julian Assange is not a journalist. You can see it there in grey. There he is. The 47-year-old. Remember, looks like a fucking Santa Claus with AIDS, but he's 47. Here you go. No, he's not a journalist. Argue the National Review. They don't really necessarily explain it, but they said, he's an activist, isn't he? And let me just read it to you. This is David French, by the way. David French, okay, was a veteran, a conservative, a guy who, for some reason, carries a lot of truck in certain circles. Let me just pull this up so we can get to this. Boom. Right. Let me just read you the last line. What journalist would ever say this? Prosecute him for his crimes, condemn him for his corruption, but do not call that vile man a journalist. Wow. The left, the right, they're in agreement, aren't they? Assange is embarrassed. The US government. This tells you all you need to know, right? East, west, left, right. We don't give a fuck. Anybody that stops the US, that makes the US population maybe question our foreign policy, is evil. It don't matter whether you're liberal. It don't matter whether you're fucking Republican. Isn't that weird? It's almost like none of it matters. It's like why we turned a blind eye to Saudi Arabia being the biggest exporters of Wahhabist and Salafist fucking radical Islam, being involved in 9/11. Hey, but you got all that oil and we got all those ties and we just turn a fucking blind eye to it. Assange is bad. Saudi Arabia is good. Stick him on the fucking Human Rights Council. Wait, you must never, ever, ever question American foreign policy. Never. If you do that, you're a traitor, ladies and gentlemen. That's how they want you to think. And it don't matter if you're a fucking liberal. It don't matter if you're a fucking Republican. This is the shit they peddle out. Doesn't stop there. Who else? Who else has got to fucking say it? He's not a journalist. These publications aren't as big. Let's go. Let's have a look. ABC. Boom. Here it is. Oh, wait. Wrong link. My bad. We're getting to this. We're getting to Donald Trump being a massive hypocrite piece of shit. Wrong link. I got excited. My bad. Here we go. US News. WikiLeaks Julian Assange isn't a journalist. He's not a journalist, guys. He's not. He publishes information that hurts the status quo, ergo cannot be a journalist anymore. Sorry. It's been revoked. And even though the laws and the persecution has been applied to him, could be applied to any whistleblower, any journalist around the world, we are going to pretend, actually, no, fuck this guy. Right? Stuff, a New Zealand publication, which, by the way, after Christchurch, the leftist nonsensical, shit that's going on. I understand it. I'm sympathetic. They're a nation in mourning. I get it. Julian Assange is not a journalist, and his arrest is not an attack on press freedom. What else is it? What else is it, my friends? For all the reasons that I listed, what else could it be? The Mueller report, which came out, the same Mueller report that proved there was no Russian collusion, that, like I told you right from day one, actually, the Democrats, remember the PP tape dossier? Remember how we talked about that? And BuzzFeed ran it, and CNN said, we can't run it, BuzzFeed, but if you run it first, we'll report on it. Not collusion, by the way. Not corruption, by the way. Remember how I told you it was all nonsense? Because to know about it, you would have had to have known that not only Donald Trump was going to run, but Donald Trump was going to win. Otherwise, it makes absolutely no logistical sense whatsoever. And it brought into the country this phrase, compromat, which is where you have compromising material on a foreign diplomat and you can manipulate them as a result of it through blackmail. They ran that for 2 years, uninterrupted, unfettered. The media has said Donald Trump colluded with the government. I'm going to do a whole show on the Mueller report and what it shows and what it doesn't, sure. But the reality is, I have had sad, tragic conversations with Americans where I've gone, you don't really believe Donald Trump was fucking colluding with Putin? Everything he did in Syria, the Russian government wouldn't have wanted. The collusion narrative is nonsense. They've gone, well, I absolutely do believe it, and there's evidence in plain sight. The collusion crack pipe is one of the most potent drugs that has been out there, even to the point now they're saying Mueller's corrupt and Barr's corrupt and everyone's corrupt and that he must have colluded. It is unfucking believable. But the Mueller report, and this is all you need to know, brought up Assange, brought up fucking WikiLeaks. Julian Assange is a monster, not a journalist. And why? Because he protected his sources and told some lies. Right? Now, listen, here's where I will say Assange, as a spokesperson for WikiLeaks, flirted with credibility in a way I don't think is acceptable. Right? We all remember that Seth Rich, who was a DNC staffer, got killed in a supposed robbery. And there was a lot of strange stuff about it. Like they left his wallet and whatever. And a lot of people, a lot of right-wingers said, oh, this is Clinton. This is the classic Clinton suicide, two bullets to the back of the head, without really realizing that you probably don't kill a low-level staffer, honestly, because how much could they possibly know? So Julian Assange, back in 2016, intimated and said, hey, we're offering $20,000 for the reward of any information for the murder of Seth Rich. And the intimation is that he was Seth Rich was a source to WikiLeaks, which they've subsequently shown he wasn't. And there's been no evidence to suggest he was murdered in a conspiratorial fashion. It's certainly strange, but there's no evidence to suggest he was murdered in a conspiratorial fashion. And Assange stoked that fire. And also, Assange, as proven, was on record as saying, I do not want Hillary to win. She is evil. Well, guess what? I feel that way. I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling that way. All the people who've said to me, Richard, man, you seem fucking liberal. You sound like a right socialist. Maybe the words profit is theft could come out of your mouth. Maybe it would. I was a member of the Socialist Workers' Party. Let me fucking tell you, though, Hillary Clinton is evil. She was evil. She remains evil. She's terrible. She must never be given the presidency. I do not like Donald Trump. I do not like billionaires who live in ivory towers. Certainly don't like them being given the keys to the American political system. But you're asking me to choose between a billionaire who will probably be corrupt and someone who's been corrupt from the moment they slithered onto planet Earth. I just don't know why it's unreasonable to say I would support Trump over Clinton. I do not understand why that makes me a fascist or a racist or a hypocrite. I wanted Sanders to win the primary. If Sanders had won, if his own company, his own party hadn't have fucked him, I mean, company's probably a better way of thinking about it, actually. If his own corporation, a political corporation, hadn't have fucked him out of the nomination, I'd have backed Sanders all the way. We'd have been on our stream talking about, yes, he's a champagne socialist, but he ain't Trump. But we didn't get that reality.
All the best from Poland.
Amen to fucking Poland, my friend. Right. We didn't get that reality, did we? We didn't get that reality. What did we get instead? You know what we got instead? We got Hillary Clinton fucking over a nominee and judges a fellow nominee for the party and judges going, well, when they rig an outcome and when it's not illegal, actually. There's nothing illegal about it when a party does it. Brilliant. So she was provably politically corrupt. Even in the fucking primaries. Even when we got to that point where we were trying to get nominees. So fuck Hillary Clinton. Fuck her forever. Right? Like straight up. And Donald Trump, might be a poor might be a poor alternative, but holy shit, he's the only alternative when you put those two out for me. So anyway, Assange did sort of underline the idea that Seth Rich was leaking information to WikiLeaks and was killed as a result of that. There's no evidence to support it. By all accounts, it looks like he was lying. This doesn't make him a monster. This doesn't pull his journalistic credentials. He never said otherwise. It's not ideal. It's not nice. It caused that family a lot of pain. I'm incredibly sympathetic to that. But the idea that because of that, he isn't a journalist and should be extradited and fucked with is nonsense. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Right, let's jump to the next bit. I'll just show you some other various blogs, just to show you this was widespread. Not a journalist is the mainstream watchword. This was another one. Not a journalist. And there were others, like so many others. So many journalists arguing that he isn't a journalist. It is so fucking gross. It is so worrying. It is so alarming. Just Google the phrase, Julian Assange is not a journalist, and you will find out exactly why. Now, why am I pissed off at Donald Trump over this? Well, you know, Donald Trump showed his true colors on this issue. There are many things I don't like Donald Trump over. I think, but look, here's the fundamental point of why Donald Trump needs to be voted out in 2020, and we need to get Tulsi Gabbard or a real candidate in, a real human being in. I will be supporting Tulsi Gabbard 100%. Right? Like, I will be running streams. I will be beaming propaganda into your brain. Right? So maybe avoid my stream during the election. But here's why Donald Trump has to be voted out. Donald Trump has shown every step of the way that he has some good ideas. He can maybe even get those ideas implemented. But he remains a habitual liar, a fantasist, a guy who can never admit he was wrong, a hypocrite. Like, these are not positive qualities for somebody to be in charge. And we needed 2-3 years to really see them. I have no doubt by now Hillary Clinton would have got us in a war with Iran. Hillary Clinton would have got us in a war with Russia, probably. Like, woe betide she was in. Some of us would be dead. But Donald Trump, he has no moral fiber. He has no principles. And we knew this. We did know this. He's a billionaire who has failed upwards. You might like him. You might like his demeanor, his no-nonsense attitude. That's fine. But let me tell you, when a sitting president does everything they do to worm out of showing their tax returns, it should be mandatory that your tax returns are public once you take the highest office, any office. I would say any politician must be transparent about their tax returns. Why not? He didn't do that. He is still legally fighting that. That should make you very fucking worried. Because, like a lot of billionaires, like a lot of corporations, Amazon are no better, by the way, saying that on Twitch, fuck you, paying like 0 income tax. I probably paid more in tax than Amazon, right? That's fucked up. There's something wrong with the system. The system's got to change. And fuck the corporations and the companies who go, we're just operating within the system. You know what's morally right. And Donald Trump is hiding the fact that he has evaded taxes. So no. Donald Trump is a liar and a fucking hypocrite. And no, there is no place more where he's proven it than the way he has treated Assange. Let me just show you this. This is SF Gate. All right. It's like a San Francisco publication. And it's just to show you transparently where I get my links from, where I get my sources from. Okay, so during his shut up. during his campaign, and I'm sure many of you have seen the video, Donald Trump said categorically, I love WikiLeaks. He talked about how great WikiLeaks was. You know why? Because they leaked the Podesta emails. It showed the Hillary Clinton campaign, showed the DNC to be exactly what it is, a corrupt, farcical, group of people who fucked Bernie over. And he said, yo, I love WikiLeaks. And I remember this. And I honestly thought, maybe Trump is the guy, the president, who will grant asylum in America and pardon Assange because of what he did. And that would have been a partisan decision, but regardless of its motivations, it would have been the right one. Would have been the best one for journalists, right? So they did, and a lot of publications did this, 5 dated occasions. I'll read them to you. October 10th, 2016. This just came out. WikiLeaks. I love WikiLeaks, he said. Talking about Hillary Clinton. WikiLeaks undoubtedly contributed towards Hillary Clinton losing the election. October 12th, 2016 in Florida. This WikiLeaks stuff is unbelievable. It tells you the inner heart. You got to read it. October 13th, Ohio. It's been amazing what's coming out on WikiLeaks. October 31st, Michigan. Another one came in today. This WikiLeaks is like a treasure trove. November 4th, 2016, also in Ohio. Getting up the plane, they were just announcing new WikiLeaks, and I wanted to stay there, but I didn't want to keep you waiting. Boy, I love reading these WikiLeaks. At no point did he decry, which is the American stance now, that WikiLeaks is evil, WikiLeaks is dangerous, WikiLeaks is endangering U.S. lives, Assange is a fucking traitor, Assange isn't a journalist. He loved it because it served his political ends. That's Trump in a nutshell. And then ABC, they counted them all up. This is the caliber of the man. 141 times he had praised Assange or WikiLeaks. 141. And then when asked about it after Assange was arrested and clearly the US intend to extradite.
I know nothing about...
Right.
I know nothing about WikiLeaks.
If you're a Trump supporter, this is your God Emperor. This is your truth teller. Right? Listen to it again. Listen to the full video. This is a guy who, when WikiLeaks were helping him win an election, loved them. Loved Assange, loved WikiLeaks. Talked about them on the campaign trail 141 times. I believe that count. I remember at the time when the DNC and the Podesta emails came out, and everybody was talking about how it made the DNC look bad, and it was a useful tool if you wanted to keep Hillary Clinton out of the White House. And I myself was like, oh my God, thank the fucking Lord. Finally, someone is starting to turn over the right types of stones. We all know what... Republican corruption is so fucking small time and pathetic and transparent and obvious compared to what the fucking Democrats have been up to these last 8 years. But okay. But again, when asked about it, here's what your God Emperor, the man who's going to drain the swamp, here's what he had to say. Remember this, because if you support Trump after this, right... Assange might die. Remember that.
It's not my thing. I know nothing about WikiLeaks. It's not my thing. And I know there is something having to do with Julian Assange. I've been seeing what's happened with Assange, and that will be a determination, I would imagine, mostly by the Attorney General, who's doing an excellent job. So he'll be making a determination. I know nothing really about him. It's not my deal in life.
Do you understand now? It is so insane. What a liar and a fucking hypocrite he is. And listen, maybe you say to yourself, well, he's a liar and a hypocrite, but all politicians are. You're right. That's why I never judged him too harshly prior to this. But you owe part of your electoral success to Assange and WikiLeaks. You promoted them as being a normalized part of the journalistic landscape. You said you loved them. You told people on the campaign trail it was essential that they read them. You directed people to WikiLeaks at a time that CNN was saying, if you read WikiLeaks, it's illegal. Only journalists can read WikiLeaks. Yes, they actually said that. Go check it out. So, what are we dealing with here? Like, what kind of asshole? Like, who's got in his ear? I don't even think anybody did. I think this is just classic Trump. To save face with the American public, who will call this guy a traitor, to appeal and keep on board the all the people in his cabinet. I mean, this is a guy who also, by the way, said didn't want to pardon Edward Snowden. Talked about Chelsea Manning. He has no sympathy with whistleblowers whatsoever. He doesn't like the truth, because why would he? And meanwhile, he's out there talking about fake news and everything else. What an opportunity to come out and say you will defend journalism. What an opportunity to come out and protect Assange and say, I've said a lot about fake news. People have said I'm anti-journalism. I'm not. Assange is a journalist. He will have asylum here in the US. What he did, we're not going to punish him for that. He was doing his job. No. Same old political shit. And just another snake. This time with a fucking weave. They're all the same, folks. They're all the same, but some are fucking worse than others. You know what I mean? The baseline of a politician is evil. Now, there's one other thing. I would urge you, listeners, there are some publications you can't trust about Assange. And let me tell you, one of them is The Guardian. Linked to them earlier. I knew what I was doing. Everything's planned. The Guardian in 2018, 27th of November, they actually did something unbelievable. It's unbelievable that a mainstream publication would do this, but they did it. They still haven't apologized and they still haven't recanted. And now they're writing articles about how Julian Assange needs to be fucking extradited and put in the fucking hole. And I wonder why. Let's have a look. The Guardian. Here's a website you might want to check out from time to time. It's called News Sniffer. News Sniffer. Terrible name, but a very good feature. And what it does is, it freezes, like archive.is, it freezes an article in time, and then it will show you subsequent edits and updates, and it will compare them side by side for you, so you can see how publications lie. Right? Very important. And what The Guardian did is they ran a story. Here it is, the original link. Manafort, that's Paul Manafort from the Trump administration, held secret talks with Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. Right? Original headline. Manafort held secret talks with Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. It is unclear why Manafort wanted to see Assange and what was discussed, but the last meeting is likely to come under scrutiny and could interest Robert Mueller, the special prosecutor who is investigating alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And according to two sources, Manafort returned to the embassy in 2015. He paid another visit in spring 2016, turning up alone around the time Trump named him as his convention manager. The visit is tentatively dated to March. Right, and this is another part of contention. Why Manafort sought out Assange in 2013 is unclear. During this period, the veteran consultant was involved in black operations against Yanukovych's chief political rival, Yulia Tymoshenko, who Yanukovych had jailed. Manafort ran an extensive lobbying operation featuring European former politicians. So again, the premise of this story at the height of the Russian collusion insanity was Assange was working with Russians, the US government was working for the Russians, everyone was working for the Russians, and in 2013 they knew not only that Donald Trump was going to run, he was also going to win, but he was also going to need help to take down the DNC, and WikiLeaks were going to have the material to do this. Absurd premise, an absurd premise. Immediately, I hope everybody listening can understand why that story is gibberish. That is the story The Guardian ran Well, guess what they did? They just changed it. They just edited it. They realized they got it wrong. Manafort, it's been proven, he never visited the Ecuadorian embassy, never met Assange, so they walked it back. They just changed it. Right? Manafort held secret talks with Assange. Sources say. It is unclear why Manafort would have, not did have, would have wanted to see Assange, but the last apparent, they started adding all these caveats. According to the sources, not two sources, these sources, Manafort returned to the embassy in 2015. He paid another visit in 2016. Why Manafort might have sought out Assange in 2013, they changed this article to basically let them off the hook, pretended they never published the original. Right? And on they just went. Now, thank God, right? One of my colleagues, a man I have a lot of respect for, he did get a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome, but I think he's cured, and he's a guy you should all respect. He's made mistakes. He's written articles that I don't necessarily approve of. He also ran a publication that had a guy who phoned in a lot of fake bomb threats to synagogues, and was part of the supposed rise in New York anti-Semitic hate crime that everyone put on Trump. But Glenn Greenwald is one of the most important journalists of this century, and he runs a website called The Intercept. And let me tell you, thank God, because as a gay liberal, he's an important voice, and he remains vaguely sane on most issues, in the same way that a Mike Tracy does. This is 5 weeks after The Guardian's viral blockbuster Assange Manafort scoop. No evidence has emerged, just stonewalling. And this is, again, sorry you can't really see it properly here. It's just how XSplit works. But basically, Glenn Greenwald has done a breakdown of how there's no evidence. And The Guardian is running away from its false fucking information. Now, WikiLeaks took it so seriously, right, that they actually are they're going to sue. They're in the process of a lawsuit against The Guardian. And good on them. And everybody should support this. Reported in The Hill. WikiLeaks launches legal fund to sue Guardian for their fake Manafort report, which is exactly what it was. No evidence. They edited it stealthily. They haven't apologized. They refuse to acknowledge they did anything wrong. The Mueller report now, by the way, exonerates the idea that Manafort met with WikiLeaks. There is no evidence anywhere. That was an unprecedented investigation. Manafort did not meet with Julian Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. But The Guardian is trying to wriggle out of this lawsuit, trying to pretend they didn't write the things that they wrote. And let me just show you something that's super interesting here. That basically what they're doing now is they're being pretty heavily against Julian Assange. Let me see if I can just find you one of the articles. There were a lot of people coming out and criticizing Assange in the in the Guardian. There was one op-ed that that kind of stuck up for him. But anyway, you can go and find these yourself. The Guardian sort of breathing a sigh of relief, honestly, because of everything that's been going on there. They've published one op-ed that basically defends Assange, saying it's problematic. He might not be a journalist, but it's still problematic anyway. But generally, they're super happy at the prospect of him getting absolutely fucked. And also, here we go. Here's just a summary. Somebody created a blog called Dump the Guardian. I mean, just dump the Guardian anyway, because it's terrible. It's got nothing to do with Assange. Like, Pete Guardian is a phrase for a reason. But here it is. The Guardian has profited a lot from Julian Assange's work, but over the years become increasingly hostile towards him. Now, John Pilger, if you don't know, John Pilger is a legendary war correspondent. And one of the reasons why, and this is really not popular, one of the reasons why I respect in a way, but not entirely, but sort of do, Piers Morgan. I'll let that sink in. Sorry, we better have a drink. Wash the taste out my mouth. Yeah, I know. It's tough. But let me explain why. Piers Morgan took over the Daily Mirror in the UK, and what Piers Morgan did was he made the Mirror the only anti-Iraq war publication in Britain. And he hired John Pilger as a columnist. Now, Piers Morgan's a piece of shit. He's a smarmy, smug asshole. But if you know your history about journalism, as I do, he hired so many anti-war columnists. He made John Pilger a columnist writing for a mainstream British tabloid. And if you remember why Piers Morgan got fired, he got fired for publishing fake photos of abuse of Iraqis in Guantanamo Bay when it turned out it was really happening. So the photos were fake, but it was really happening. And Piers published those because he desperately wanted to stop what was going on with U.S. foreign policy and the war in Iraq. He lost his job over that. I even wrote him a letter, one of my famous letters, but it was by hand, so I can't read it to you now. I even wrote Piers Morgan a letter just saying, listen, you fucked up. There's lots of reasons why you would know Piers Morgan if you were a British journalist. Youngest ever editor-in-chief of a mainstream tabloid publication with News of the World, I think it was. So he tried to make the Mirror a platform for what was right and just when everyone else was banging the drums of war, and he gave John Pilger a job. And it was actually, as a young man, my first exposure to regular John Pilger content. It was brilliant. I used to buy the Mirror all the time to read John Pilger's content. So Piers Morgan, he's 99% gone, 99% evil, but there was that sliver that did something good. Remember, never write anyone off completely. We don't do that here. So anyway, this is what John Pilger had to say about The Guardian and their treatment of Assange. And that John Pilger is a legend. It'll be a sad day when he passes. His war correspondence work, his anti-war stance, it is a treat, a true tool for liberals everywhere. And I suggest very strongly you seek out his work if you don't know it. The Guardian has exploited the work of Assange and WikiLeaks in what its previous editor called the greatest scoop of the last 30 years. The paper creamed off all of WikiLeaks' revelations and claimed the accolades and riches that came with them. Not a penny was going to Julian Assange or to WikiLeaks. A hyped Guardian book led to a lucrative Hollywood movie, also true. The book's authors, Luke Harding and David Lee, turned on their source, abused him, disclosed the secret password Assange had given the paper in confidence, which was designed to protect a digital file containing leaked US Embassy cables. The Guardian, ladies and gentlemen. On the 27th of November 2018, The Guardian published a story by Luke Harding, headline, Manafort had secret talks with Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. It has been shared by over 162,000 people on Facebook alone. The Guardian has not provided any evidence for it, refused to retract it. In an interview with The Observer, a sister publication, the Sunday equivalent of The Guardian, journalist Glenn Greenwald, who used to work for The Guardian, said The Guardian's happy to... Well, I say sister publication. I think it's got the same money, people. I remember it's like you don't have a Guardian on Sunday, but you have The Observer. So it's interesting that they would run this. The Guardian's happy to be used. If you publish something like a totally fake story, there are so many benefits to it and almost no consequences. This is The Guardian. Glenn Greenwald, I think, has been published and cited by The Guardian saying this. If you look at Luke Harding's traffic metrics, they went through the roof. That's an incentive scheme to continue to do shitty journalism. In their excellent alert on the Assange arrest, Media Lens wrote of the claimed meeting, no shred of evidence has ever been produced for the claim, which WikiLeaks and Manafort have both vehemently denied, and the story has been widely regarded as fake virtually from the hour of its publication. Luke Harding, the lead journalist on the story, and his editors Paul Johnson and Catherine Viner have never apologized or retracted the story in any way, nor have they responded to many challenges about it. As we have previously noted, The Guardian has a disreputable record in publishing nasty, abusive, and derogatory pieces about Assange. You know why, guys? Because he served his use to them. He served his purpose, and now he's being crucified. And they will not defend him. The Guardian, the liberal bastion of truth and journalism in Britain, they will not defend Julian Assange. Isn't that grotesque? Greenwald has recently commented, "I've come to peace with the fact that this story will never be retracted, even though everyone, including The Guardian, I'm sure, know it's utter bullshit, a joke. But it's still worth noting because it shows how unmoored the media is to any notions of accountability." And doesn't that apply to games journalism? And doesn't that apply to all journalism? And doesn't that apply right now with the Assange situation? So it says here, below, we have compiled a list of 44 Guardian articles to show you how The Guardian has treated Assange and WikiLeaks. Oh my lord, what happens if I click on that link? What happens? Here we go. Here's all the headlines. So remember, this is while The Guardian has benefited from Julian Assange's reporting by also reporting it and saying it's true and it's valid, by having journalists write a book that was optioned and turned into a movie. There's been documentaries where The Guardian have benefited. All right, let's just go through these headlines. WikiLeaks has blood on its hands over Afghan war logs. Just what does Julian Assange want? Who implied he wanted anything? Theo. Who implied that? Who implied he wanted anything? Maybe he wants to tell the truth. Do you remember what that was like? I do. Julian Assange is like a high-tech terrorist, says Joe Biden. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was obsessed with power and ex-insider claims. Why I felt I had to turn my back on WikiLeaks. The treachery of Julian Assange. Julian Assange, from hero to zero, 2011. A year ago, we Swedes hailed Assange as a James Bond of the net. Now he's a pitiable, paranoid figure. Luke Harding, the aforementioned. The World Tomorrow. Julian Assange proves a useful idiot. Definition of paranoia. Supporters of Julian Assange. What is Slutwalk London doing lining up behind Julian Assange? Why would you compare a slutwalk as being even remotely comparable to the profound importance of WikiLeaks in our time? Jemima Khan. Julian Assange risks becoming an Australian L. Ron Hubbard. That's the founder of Scientology. When has he ever tried to found a religion? When's he ever tried to found a cult? How would you do this from an embassy in London where you are virtually in solitary confinement? Bit of a strange parameter for a cult, I would say. Today, program guest edited by PJ Harvey, slated as liberal drivel, and that was where she praised WikiLeaks. The Guardian view on Julian Assange: no victim of arbitrary detention. WikiLeaks made its name by exposing those who ignored the rule of law. Its editor-in-chief should recognize the rule of law applies to him as well as the US government. How did the UN get it so wrong on Julian Assange? This is after the UN basically said he had been inhumanely treated and had been detained for too long, even under the parameters of asylum. So that settles it. Everyone's to blame except Julian Assange. Sarcastic headline that basically says, actually, Julian Assange is to blame for his current plight. From liberal beacon to a prop for Trump. And in 2016 onwards, you're going to see the Guardian really turn. Because Assange, as I said, by publishing the truth, he did help. By publishing the truth about the DNC, he did help Trump get elected. But shouldn't we blame the DNC for being a provably corrupt institution? No, apparently not. We blame Trump and we blame Assange. Okay, cool. Julian Assange defies Swedish prosecutors by releasing rape statement. Julian Assange is not alone in his lack of empathy for women. This is when the term incel was doing the rounds. With Farage, Assange, and Trump, who needs political satire? Indeed, how are these people even vaguely comparable? Who knows? I guess the Guardian would need to explain that to you. Farage meets Assange in a shameless liberal alliance. I mean, sure, what could be more liberal than a journalist dedicated to the truth and a politician trying to extricate ourselves from the status quo of the European Union, where whether you like Farage or not. That was pretty much the central premise of the UKIP party. It operated outside of the two-party system. Yes, this is hugely liberal. Oh, it's Nick Cohen again. All right, cool. Fuck Nick Cohen. Just put that in your brain if you're not listening right now. The moral of the Assange story: wait long enough and bad stuff goes away. Ah, yes, bad stuff. Okay, no problem. Risk review: serviceable portrait of Julian Assange's vanity. Ah, he's vain. Yes, imagine that. Not like any mainstream journalist. They're certainly not vain. They're certainly not weak. They certainly don't lie. They certainly don't protect each other. Okay, no problem. Trump, Assange, Bannon, and Farage, they are bound together in an unholy alliance. Again, Steve Bannon from Breitbart, later White House advisor. Donald Trump, Republican nomination for the presidency. Farage, the guy that helped UKIP get over the line and was instrumental in having the Brexit referendum subsequently be supposedly recognized as accurate. And Assange, an independent journalist who leaks diplomatic cables to the public. Perhaps you can tell me how this is an unholy alliance. Who knows? 37,000 shares. People really like that one. Do you know why people really like that one? Because it was like, the only way Brexit can win, the only way Trump can win is if people are misinformed. And actually, when our chosen political parties win, it's just the truth. As if no Democratic candidate, as if no Labour candidate, as if no non-Brexit candidate has ever fucking lied. Imagine believing that. James Ball: the only barrier to Julian Assange leaving Ecuador's embassy is pride. No, it's that and the fact to be extradited, charged with trumped up bullshit charges, and probably killed. Okay, yeah, all right. Oh, but you've got something else to say, James Ball. No problem. Ecuador's patience with Assange has run out, and he only has himself to blame. Interesting, 2018. The Ballad of Pammy and Julian Assange, her poor, mournful sea lion. Now, that's a bit of a bizarre headline. Let's read the next part. The WikiLeaks emperor has been wrongly accused of so many things, says the former Baywatch star. It's Pamela Anderson. But can the relationship survive now that the Ecuadorian embassy has cut his internet? So this is when they actually cut his internet access because they were worried he was still leaking cables. Again, remember that month, May? Didn't it just cut? Oh, it was, yeah, okay, all right, cool. Whatever. The Pamela Anderson, when celebrities come out and support vocally liberal causes, they're completely lauded and told they're the best people ever. Pamela Anderson, not your obvious choice, a liberal person. She came out and supported Julian Assange, and she's mocked. Weird how that works. How Julian Assange became an unwelcome guest in Ecuador's embassy. Let's already start stoking the narrative that he is, and this is, again, a year ago. This is how early it all started. Let's start stoking the mythology, the lie he's an unwelcome guest, because why would you offer him asylum? Revealed Russia's secret plan to help Julian Assange escape from the UK, because he was a Russian agent all along. It couldn't just be that Russia maybe realized that this person was going to... I mean, they're incapable of mercy. They're Russians, right? Isn't that what we're taught these days? Shouldn't we go to war with Russia? No, Russian asylum isn't valid. Sorry, guys. How to get rid of an unwanted housemate. The Ecuadorians are fed up with their longtime lodger. Manafort held secret talks with Assange. Didn't, of course. Never retracted that story. Julian Assange has repeatedly violated asylum's terms, says the president. And here we are in April. The 7-year itch, Assange's awkward stay in the embassy. Assange branded a narcissist by the judge who found him guilty. Why would that matter? Again, I remind you all, journalists, the most precious pathetic, narcissistic group on planet Earth right now. Rude, ungrateful, and meddling. Why Ecuador turned on Assange. WikiLeaks. What the papers say about Assange. Oh, WikiLeaks. That is, of course, mocking him smearing feces on the walls, which in any other situation, a human being smearing feces on the walls while being in solitary confinement, you would say this is a man in distress, this is a man who needs medical help, this is a man who's being treated inhumane. But of course, all humanity must be jettisoned out of the window like fucking Ripley saying, stay away from her, you bitch, because that is how we roll in the mainstream media. Oh, you thought we were liberal? You thought we were on your side? Oh, no. Only when it sells papers. Now you know. Labour row breaks out over Assange sexual assault allegations. Hillary Clinton. Assange must answer for what he has done in the wake of his arrest. Crazy that fucking mental bitch would turn up again. Remember, she's publicly ruled out, as part of a strategy to definitely rule her in, that she's going to run in 2020. And this is the woman who, according to inside sources at the White House, actually said, can't we just drone and kill him? People thought it was a joke. They laughed nervously. She then, again, allegedly turned around and said, I'm not joking. Let's drone him. This is while she was Secretary of Defense. Trevor Noah said, hackers make terrible house guests. Weird, isn't it? Oh, there I was thinking Trevor Noah, as an African man, being one of the first people of color in a mainstream American late night show, might even be able to sort of buck the system. Same talking points coming out of his mouth. But don't worry, it's okay. He's black, guys. He's black. He's African. What's wrong with you? Are you prejudiced? But he's saying the same shit the white guys do. Yes, that's because he's a corporate tool and we're using him and using his blackness. Don't you get it? Yeah, I do. That's my point. Oh, wait. Sorry, we misspoke. Back to bed, America. Back to bed, America. All right, no problem. This keeps going on. Failure to extradite Assange to Sweden is an endorsement of rape culture. Of course, they did drop the charges. It wasn't even rape. It wasn't like he held down and had forcible sex with someone. Let's make a distinction there. Let's make a distinction. Right, okay. What he did was he did something that constitutes rape in Sweden, but probably doesn't constitute fucking rape in 99% of the world. And again, that's also allegedly. Now, I believe he should have answered these, he should have answered these allegations in a court of law. Absolutely. Nobody should be above the law. But it's also kind of weird, isn't it? It's kind of weird that it all came out at the time that WikiLeaks was taken off. So I'm not above it being a conspiracy of some sort, but whatever. Julian Assange's case makes it clear women's rights are still secondary to political games. Assange has been collared. His cat knows the feeling. Oh, let's all have a laugh about a man probably getting extradited to his death. Might even commit suicide. Who knows? He's clearly mentally ill. And it's okay because we're the Guardian and we've got a lawsuit going on with him. Wouldn't it just be hilarious if he hung himself in his cell? The Guardian, ladies and gentlemen. Assange tried to use embassy as center for spying, said Ecuador's Marino, another allegation without any proof. And why is the left blinkered to claims about Assange and sexual assault? Nobody is. But we also recognize that what's happening to him as a result of his journalism is a goddamn disgrace. 44 times The Guardian denigrated him, lied about him, signal boosted, people making questionable statements about him. And there you go. I mean, and isn't it interesting? Because, again, I'm old-fashioned. Look, I'll be honest. I've heard from better and bigger streamers than me that I actually don't know what I'm talking about. Like, for example, when I said that Obama had imprisoned whistleblowers and journalists and put sanctions against journalists and used law to spy on journalists way worse than Trump did. I remember a very popular streamer actually coming into my chat and saying I was lying, even though, again, if you knew how to use Google, which I think you only do before debates, obviously, it's provably true. But that's fine. I mean, I don't know anything politically. But again, as a idiot that I am on the matter of journalism and how it interfaces with politics. Literally my area of expertise in a way no one else streaming on Twitch has. Let me just tell you, yeah, it's kind of fucked up, innit? That, wait, we're the victims of a lawsuit from the guy who runs the company that's bringing the lawsuit, and we're constantly publishing this slew of questionable information about him or op-eds that denigrate him. Yeah, very strange. Very strange. Can't think why we'd have a motivation for that. Might sound like the kind of conflict of interest that you might want to, I don't know, as a publication, recuse yourself from and just report the facts. But again, I know nothing. I know nothing. I know nothing. What do I know about journalism, guys? You know, you're just a games journalist. You're not even a real journalism. That's right. So, Julian Assange, guys. It's a disgrace. There is no other stance to take than to support him. Whatever you think, even if you're a Democrat and you think you fucked your party over and put Trump in the White House, even if you think Trump is pure evil and you think they helped put Trump in the White House, admittedly, Assange says, yes, we publish information to help put Trump in the White House. Fuck Hillary Clinton. He said that. He is not without his own biases. Doesn't mean he's not a journalist. Does not mean that. And listen, let me just find this, because I think you'll all enjoy this. And it's not often I get to play this guy on my fucking stream. Because remember, Richard Lewis is right-wing. Richard Lewis is an alt-right Nazi. Richard Lewis doesn't stand up consistently for the virtues of the left. He only criticizes the right. That's all he ever does. Literally just spent, like 2 hours doing the opposite of that. But that's all he does. We got him. All right, well, let me just show you. I've got to I got to scroll through quite a bit here. Because I listened to the video I'm about to play you. Right. And thank courtesy of Glenn Greenwald, who obviously I do follow on Twitter. And listen, despite everything, despite some of his TDS and a lot of other stuff, he's a good journalist. He like I say, he broke the most important story of the century with the Edward Snowden links. He's a guy who's put his life on the line multiple times in the interests of truth. And in previous episodes of the podcast, I've criticized him. He's very anti-Trump. He's very anti-Republican, you know, for probably obvious reasons. But he published this video, and Noam Chomsky. Now, you can't see it. It's probably down there. Do you see that white spine down there next to the blue one? I believe that is some Chomsky. I think I got a lot of his books on there. I read a lot of Chomsky. Remember, I'm a lefty, right? Whatever people want to say about me being like, you're a centrist and you had brain cancer because you liked facts. Yes, I don't. Yes, my gum-chewing friend, I do not think Donald Trump actually was trying to start a race war in Mexico. There's no evidence to suggest it. Yeah, but by saying there's no evidence, you are the centrist. I love the fact that right-wing people and left-wing people together can be so fucking stupefyingly ill-informed that anybody who tries to take a nuanced opinion on anything goes, yeah, but there's no evidence for that. Centrist, brain cancer, centrist, skeptic, centrist. They just throw all the same smears out, both left and right, and then they pretend they have nothing in common with each other. They're both demagogues. They're both just extreme demagogues. But I like Chomsky. I think he's a very important thinker. I understand that some of the stuff he says can inflame conservative sensibilities. In general, he's one of the good guys. This is what he had to say about Assange.
Performed an enormous service to all the people in the world. Julian Assange has performed an enormous service to all the people in the world who treasure the values of freedom and democracy, and who therefore demand the right to know what their elected representatives are doing.
Yes.
And
don't we
for
just?
that very reason, he's one of the most dangerous criminals on the face of the earth, pursued with savagery by the rulers of the free and democratic societies.
And again, I don't know if anybody here is like, you know when you hear like oxymoronic statements. Let's just listen to that again, Chomsky, because he nails it. And I think a lot of people will just take that as face value and go, oh yeah, he is. Let the words sink in and understand why Chomsky is completely on point here, and understand why the words like democratic and free, they are oxymorons when you behave this way towards Julian Assange.
Dangerous criminals on the face of the earth, pursued with savagery by the rulers of the free and democratic societies.
That's right. Pursued with savagery.
There is a
from
basic
the rulers
principle
of free and democratic
that's well
societies.
Understood by serious analysts. Actually, it was explained quite clearly by the professor of the science of government at Harvard University, the distinguished liberal political scientist and a government advisor, Samuel Huntington. He observed, I'll quote him, that the architects of power in the United States must create a force that can be felt but not seen. Power remains strong when it remains in the dark. Exposed to the sunlight, it begins to evaporate. And he gave some telling examples concerning the real nature of the Cold War. He was discussing U.S. military intervention abroad, and he observed, I'll quote him again, that you may have to sell intervention or other military action in such a way as to create the misimpression that it is the Soviet Union that you're fighting.
Real journalism.
Wait.
That's right.
Wait. What was that?
LS shoe keep it up, dog.
What was that, Noam, about lying about the Russians?
You're not even a real journalist.
That's kind of weird. Didn't you?
God damn it, Rich. I just woke up to go to work on the East Coast and you're still going strong on the stream. Lol, I'll catch the VOD later.
Always,
Peace,
buddy.
brother.
I'll be, might be getting back to some East Coast action soon. Keep you posted. Let's just listen to this again. We probably have to go back quite a little bit with Noam Chomsky. I want you to just listen to this, separate from Assange, and understand why we've been stoking this anti-Russian bullshit.
Exposed to the sunlight, it begins to evaporate. And he gave some telling examples concerning the real nature of the Cold War. He was discussing U.S. military intervention abroad, and he observed, I'll quote him again, that you may have to sell intervention or other military action in such a way as to create the misimpression that it is the Soviet Union that you're fighting. That's what the United States has been doing ever since the Truman Doctrine. And there are many illustrations of that.
Certainly are, yeah.
Leading principle.
It's not all Rocky IV, is it? No.
Julian Assange has committed the grave crime of exposing power to sunlight, which may cause power to evaporate if the population grasps the opportunity to become independent citizens of a free
country is where it ends. Because when you post videos on Twitter, for some reason, it cuts off the start and the end. You have to leave a buffer about 1 second. But anyway, yes, Noam Chomsky completely on point. And this is why it's even more disheartening that so many liberals, so many supposed liberals, have leapt at the chance to sort of say, yes, Assange is terrible. Assange is a disgrace. Assange needs to be persecuted and prosecuted and everything else. There is no justification for the attitudes that a lot of people who ostensibly are, they say we're liberals. Do you support complete open journalism? Yes, and fuck Donald Trump for his oppression of journalists. All right, so what about Assange? Assange isn't a journalist. Assange isn't a journalist, apparently. So, listen, I'm going to wrap up the Assange talk there. I'm obviously watching this situation with interest. I would tell every one of you that this is very important. If you do care about the pathways through which we tell the truth, then what happens to Assange is of huge importance. If he dies in mysterious circumstances, I think we all know what went down. If he's imprisoned for life for what he did, I think we all know the message that is, you know, the powers that be are trying to send out. So yeah, we absolutely must pay attention and stand up for fucking Julian Assange and everything that he was trying to do, even if we think he's eccentric, even if we suspect he might have been guilty of those crimes in Sweden. Yes, even then.